Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Shadows Podcast. I'm your host, Trip Bodenheimer, and today we're excited to have Cory Etchberger, the son of Medal of Honor recipient, Chief Master Sergeant Richard Etchberger, joining us today. But before we get started with that, we got a full house. I'm joined by Batista and one of our newest members, Pearson, which I'm sure y'all got to check out his episode, which we have been getting tons and tons of positive feedback on. But first of all, Batista, what's going on with you?
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm excited for the holidays coming up. Got a good workout in this morning. So it's been a good day so far, taking one thing at a time on my to-do list. But I'm here, I'm present, and I'm excited.
All right, and then Pearson, welcome.
There we go. What's going on, everyone? Just gearing up for another graduation at the academy over here. But after that, it's holiday time. I'm headed to Texas on Monday, and I'm going to enjoy some good Christmas holiday food with my mom and my brothers.
There you go. I think last time I talked to you, it was right before another holiday, and you were eating some
I was
good
getting ready
food.
to cook.
Yeah. So welcome to Shadows Podcast, Cory Etchberger. It's an honor to have you here. I've known him since my time at Spangdahlem at the Airman Leadership School. It's where I got connected with him. He's an amazing person. Sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And just before we get started here, I know it may sound shallow, but thank you guys for your service to our country.
Oh, we appreciate that, sir. Definitely. We're going to get started with a couple of rapid fire questions for you. First, what book do you think should be mandatory for everybody to read?
Gosh, that's a good question. Of course, I could say at all costs. I really do think it really is a great book written by Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force, and it talks about leadership. It talks about how to lead, and but it's the thing I like about it the most, actually, is that it's got a great personal touch to it. Chief Pro Eddie has done a great job of bringing to life a personal story, and why somebody would want to enter the Air Force, how they got into the Air Force, and I just think it's a good personal story. It's not just about the Air Force; it's about a person, and so that's really why I like it.
That's a good one. You provided me a copy of that, so that was definitely a good read. We'll have the link for that on this show description as well.
Awesome. What is something in life you really have an appreciation for that most people don't?
I'm going to say, you know what? Let's go back to 1968, guys. This is before any of this sort of stuff that you guys already know about. There were no shirts. There were no first sergeants. And Dad kind of became one of those. And he took care of his men. I mean, that's really the bottom line. I never served, and we can talk about why that is. But Dad became a shirt before there were shirts, before there were first sergeants. He took care of his men, and that's the thing that I remember. We were living in the Philippines. All right, this is 1965. All right. Water was a big deal. I mean, water flowed out of the tap, but it wasn't necessarily, all that good. And so when he knew he had new guys coming in, he would make sure there was these 5-gallon jugs of water sitting in their house. So when they got there, their family had potable water that they could drink. And he did that same kind of thing at every place that we lived. He made sure that when his guys got there, they had what they needed. And I guess, again, I didn't serve, but I'm saying right now that if you could do one thing, it would be what can you do to make sure when your folks show up at your station, they got what they need? So.
Well said, sir. Very well said. How do I caveat into that, really? Where is one place you hope to visit before you die? I know you've probably done a lot of traveling.
It's got to be Lima Site 85, man. It's got to be Laos. They've got a aluminum staircase that leads up there. And every time the Air Force says to me, would you like to visit that site? I always say to them, are you going to deliver me there? Can we go? And any one of you guys who wants to go with me back to Lima Site 85, I'd love to go. All right. Yeah, you got your hand up.
I was like, I'm down for that.
They have and I think I might be able to share it here maybe a little bit later. But, 2018 was the 50th anniversary of the loss of Lima Site 85. I know Trip knows that. And that is not lost, on the Laotians. They built a museum at the base of the mountain, and a aluminum staircase that goes up to the top. And if I could get there, I would love to go there. It would be emotional, but I would do it.
Well, I'm not in any kind of hurry to have you leave us just yet, sir, but when you're ready to go, I know we're all ready to jump on board.
Let's hold hands and go, man.
My last question for you, sir. In what way are you too hard on yourself?
It's kind of emotional. It's a great question. I wish that it had not been 42 years before we got this story out. I wish we had been sitting here 42 years ago talking about this stuff. But it just wasn't really meant to be. I mean, it's tough that the Air Force, and I can show you some documents, that the Air Force, covered this up for 42 years. And maybe I'm not hard on myself, but it should not have happened. This should not have been covered up for 42 years, but it was. And, it is what it is. We can't go back and undo history. I've got some documents I can show you that show that basically, and I'm not being critical. I'm just trying to tell you guys the truth. But the Air Force and the U.S. government covered this up, and that should not have happened. So it's maybe not me that I'm being critical of, but it just is the way it is.
Yes, sir. We definitely appreciate all of that candid truth here. Definitely.
Yeah, I know it was documented in the Netflix Medal of Honor series as well. So we'll definitely get into that momentarily. But to our audience, just to kind of paint a picture for who we're talking to here today. You were born, correct me if I'm wrong, January 29th.
1959. In Morocco, Africa, and I say this kind of kiddingly, but I am a proud African American.
There you go.
Yep.
I would probably be using that line as well.
Yep, down in Morocco, Africa, and Steve, my brother Steve, was already in the Air Force, and we can talk about him in a minute. And then Rich was born in Salt Lake City, 1957. And Mom and Dad were in Morocco. And yeah. So
tell us a little bit about your childhood and some of the places. I know y'all moved a little bit, so tell us a little bit about your childhood leading up to 1968.
yeah, so Rich was born in Salt Lake City. Dad was stationed at Hill Air Force Base. Now, back then, not now, but back then, Hill Air Force Base was actually at the airport at Salt Lake City. So it was not where it is now. I don't know if you've been to Hill or not, but it was not. Yeah, okay. So it was not at Hill where it is now. And Dad was worked on radar. Now back then, 1957. This is Cold War era. Okay, so what we're trying to do is we are trying to ward off the Ruskies, the Russians. And one of the things that the Air Force did back then was they had their radar on trains. And the reason it was on trains was to, keep it moving so that if the bombs come in, we can keep this radar moving. And so that it was actually a mobile radar, was actually a mobile system. So Dad was into what's called RBS, radar bomb scoring. You got to think about this. Even in that era, we're still using World War II technology. What we're doing is we're taking B-52s, we're loading them up with a bunch of bombs, and we're dropping them off during the Vietnam War. And what we're doing is we're using many bombs for one target. We're just hoping to open the bomb bay doors on those B-52s, and hopefully something's going to hit a target. Of course, you guys all know what the technology is that we have now. I was down at where was it? Anyway, one bomb, one target. That's what we got now, right? You just, if it's moving, we can hit it. I've seen the technology. But back then, in 1967, it was still World War II technology. It was only 20 years after World War II, and so that was the technology that we had. So that was 1967. We were in the Philippines, and we lived there for 2 years, and then we moved back to Bismarck, North Dakota, in 1961. And you kind of go, what the heck is that? Well, if there was B-52s up at Minot, and I remember Dad used to have some kind of something up in the attic of our house, because we had B-52s flying over our house all the time. Some kind of transponder. I don't know exactly what it was, but Dad was a shutterbug, and I bet I've got 50 or 100 pictures of B-52s flying over the house. And so we lived there for 6 years, which was in eternity in Air Force times, as you guys know. And from there, we moved to the Philippines and then back to the States. And then Dad got, this message saying basically move your family back to anywhere in the United States you want to, but it just can't be an Air Force base. So he moved us back to Hamburg, Pennsylvania, which is where his family was from. His dad had a five and dime, like a general store kind of a thing. And he moved us back there, and that's when he left. That's when he went to Laos. He got discharged from the Air Force and was hired by, I'm going to say with air quotes now, Lockheed Aircraft Services, so that they could, make sure that he didn't, and these other guys were were not in Laos because we weren't supposed to be in Laos. We had signed an agreement in 1962 saying we would have no military personnel in Laos in 1962. And so to make the cover, I want to say legitimate, but of course it wasn't. They were hired by Lockheed Aircraft Services. It's now Lockheed Martin. So he was hired by Lockheed Aircraft Services, and they did their job. They got. So what they did was they guided bombers into F-105s, mainly F-4s, F-105s into Laos, from Laos into North Vietnam. Until that point, they really couldn't bomb during bad weather or at night. And so this is the kind of system that the Air Force used between what we have now and this B-52, carpet bombing that I talked about earlier. What they did was they actually guided the planes. So they didn't guide the bombs, they guided the planes. So they could tell them, how high to fly, what vector to fly, how fast to fly. And they were able to bomb Hanoi. And the philosophy was, let's bring Ho Chi Minh, who was the president of North Vietnam at the time, let's bring him to the peace table. If we can actually bomb Hanoi, the philosophy was, let's bring him to the peace table. And those guys were sent up in that mountain with the promise, is that the right word? With the understanding that they were going to bring an early end to the Vietnam War. And so 19 guys were running this system. They ran two different groups, each of them up there for two different weeks. And the idea was, let's bring an early end to the Vietnam War. And so they were, again, quote, Air Force guys, but they had civilian badges on them, identifications. So if they were caught, captured, or killed, we could deny we had any quote military people up there.
Yeah, I believe they call, what was it? Sheep dipping is what they called it, which you were talking about.
Exactly.
But yeah, so to kind of talk about, what all went down with your father at the time, he volunteered for that mission, right?
Yeah, they all did. They all did. There were 30 guys on the setup crew who went up there and put it together, and there were 19 guys on the operations crew in two different teams.
And so with that, tell someone who's listening to this who has never heard the story of your father's heroic actions. And actually before that, I think it's important to note too that they had minimal combat training before they
well, they have. I mean, all three of you guys probably got marksman's badges.
I don't.
Right?
I don't. My vision's not very good. I do not have marksman. Pearson does.
Pearson did.
You ask him, he'll tell you he's got it.
I mean, that's how much training he had. I mean, and in the beginning, they didn't even give him any rifles, no M16s or nothing. And then eventually, after they were up there, maybe a month or so, they got some M16s up there and some ammunition. So, yeah, part of a Medal of Honor is above and beyond the call of duty. So what's this guy's job? This guy's job is to run a freaking radar and, maintain it. And he ends up saving 3 guys' lives. Two guys don't make it where he is. But, I mean, the guy went squirrel hunting in rural Pennsylvania. I mean, That's how much he's got. But as I kept saying from the very beginning, it's about taking care of your men. It's about doing what's right. Take care of the people that are around you.
I thought, and I'll be interested to hear your opinions on it as well. I thought Netflix did a remarkable job with the Medal of Honor series. Folks, if you haven't already seen it, there's an episode on his father. I definitely encourage you to go out there and check it out, because it really, paints a picture of what happened. But I think the one thing that stood out most to me by watching that episode was a lesson that a lot of people can take away in terms of being a leader, is that, he stood up when he needed to, and he took action when needed to. It wasn't something planned, but when he was faced with that moment, that instinct kicked in, and like you said, he saved some lives. So if you don't mind, tell the listeners what all transpired at Lima Site 85 with your father's heroic actions.
Well, what happened was the Air Force kind of made a bad decision, to be quite honest with you. And again, I'm not being critical. I'm just trying to tell you what I think is the truth. And the mountain was sheer cliffs on 3 sides with a trail leading up to it. And the idea was that Hmong, H-M-O-N-G, and the Hmong were wonderful allies with us during the Vietnam War. If anybody wants to look them up, they were Bang Pao was their leader. Anyway, they were at the bottom of the mountain on the trail, and the idea was that the Hmong would fend off any of the North Vietnamese that would come up the trail, because that's where the action was going to be. And the problem is the North Vietnamese decided to scale the cliffs instead. So they had their sapper units spend actually 2 days scaling the cliffs and sleeping on the side of the mountain. And so instead of coming up the trail, which is where everybody thought they would be, they decided to scale the cliffs. And they came up the cliffs. And like I said, there were 2 sets of units of our units inside the trailer. So what we're doing, so what happens is Hanoi is about 115 or 120 miles away from the site. So initially, on the very first couple days, we are bombing Hanoi, 120 miles away. And what happens is the Ho Chi Minh Trail gets built to this site. And so we can see that. And so in the beginning, the radius of where we're bombing is 120 miles away. And by the night this site actually gets overrun, they're actually bombing a half a kilometer away. So they know they're coming, but they think they're going to come up the trail, and they don't. They come over the top. So these 2 teams are running this radar site. One team is running the radar. Dad's team is over the side of the mountain on a cliff, and they get overrun by this sapper unit. I mean, North Vietnamese that are trained at actually, militarily trained, and Dad happens to have an M16 that was sent up there, and they start coming down the trail, and he basically, wards them off. These guys throw down grenades, and our team throws grenades back to them or down over the cliff. And, they basically get overrun. And Dad fends them off. And he's the only one left standing. I mean, at the end of the day, he doesn't even have a Purple Heart. At the end of the day, you guys see one of those before?
That's a beaut. Yeah.
So for our viewers who can't see it or listen on the podcast, he's showing us a Purple Heart right now. Can you elaborate on it a little more? What the Purple Heart means?
Purple Heart is for injuries in battle, and before he gets killed, he's not even injured. Is what I'm trying to get at. He is his other guys all have been injured. His other guys have all earned a Purple Heart, and he just, you saw the video. He is uninjured, which is really weird as far as I'm concerned.
He's exposing himself.
Yeah. I have talked to John Daniel, who is still alive. He's the only one left alive who Dad had saved. And he said, yeah, he still cannot believe to this day. You saw in the video, he still cannot believe to this day that Dad got killed. And what happens is the helicopter takes off. Dad's got 3 guys on the helicopter, all the guys he can get on there. And then what happens is, as you saw in the video, this is the yellowed newspaper, and it says Dad was killed in a helicopter accident. Which, you know what? That's true. he was killed in it wasn't a helicopter crash. It was a helicopter accident. And so what happens is immediately and again, I'm not being critical, and I'm not, you guys are all, I appreciate your service. But the Air Force begins to cover it up immediately, because we weren't supposed to be in Laos. And if they're caught, captured, or killed, they're going to cover it up. And that's what they do. And so it's a helicopter accident. And yeah.
So take us back to, and by the way, actually, before I go on with that, what were your opinions on how Netflix, how that series told your father's story?
Our family loved it. Yeah, we thought it was great. We worked with them from day one. They called me and they said, "Can we do this?" And if you notice that Oliver Hudson, who played Dad, I said, this guy's got to be left-handed. So if you go back and look at that, he's left-handed. I said, if you're going to do this, you got to do it right. And so, in fact, Tracy and my brother Steve and sister-in-law went and saw the filming of that part of the episode. So, things are not perfect. There are some things that are not perfect, but I'm not going to, nitpick everything. But we were in close contact with Oliver Hudson, and so.
Cory, so you mentioned that they showed that he was left-handed. Did they show that? Because in the Netflix series, they were getting grenades thrown at them. Is that what you're talking about? And you picked up the grenade and threw it back at them with their left hand?
Yep. If you go back and look at it, he shoots left-handed and does that left-handed. Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was very brave of him to do, right? And pretty funny to watch at the same time. Oh no, we'll throw this back at you, right? Also, in the Netflix series, it didn't mention what artery was hit or vein. Which was it?
To be honest with you, he got shot through the butt.
Okay, so the femoral probably.
Yeah, yeah. And, somebody has said to me, how come they didn't administer first aid to him? It's like, you can't do that. I mean, the helicopter's flying away. They've got to go like 36 miles, I think, to the next site. And I'm thinking probably nobody even knew he was shot, to be honest with you.
Yeah, his adrenaline was probably running pretty good,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So when your dad was going through that battle, you talked to some of the members that were there, right?
Yeah.
Did they ever go deeper into fight or flight for each member or with your dad?
You know what? It was so freaking chaotic. I don't think, I'm not sure anybody really knew what was going on, to be quite honest with you. I mean, those other guys, John Daniel, he lost 2 inches in one leg and a couple inches in the other leg. And Stan Sliz, the other guy he died in 2013. He was pretty bad, shot up too. So I don't think, honestly, at the time that really anybody knew what was going on. It was pretty chaotic.
Cory, when did you hear about the news about your dad? Where were you? Can you talk about that moment?
It kind of came out slowly, to be quite honest with you. 1995, I'm going to say, is probably the time that things kind of came out. Tim Castle's book, I don't know if you guys know about this book, One Day Too Long. And the title of that book is a great one because they thought the site could hold until March 10th, and they tried to hold on to it one day too long. I'm going to say that's about the time. And you know what? We found out when Tim talked to us was that the Air Force did not even have Dad's Air Force Cross on record. And it was just, how can I say it?
Well, they had like a secret ceremony at the Pentagon, right?
Now, what does that picture say to you?
Yeah.
You know who that is? That's the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. That's General John McConnell. That is the 4-star general awarding Dad the Air Force Cross. Now, what does that picture of Mom say to you?
There's not a lot of emotion on her face right there.
So, Cory, can you tell us about where were you? You were a child. What was going on with? Yeah, that.
Go ahead. Yep, go ahead. There it is.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's crazy.
I'm not gonna lie. For us, this is like a history.
Yeah,
this is like walking through the Heritage Museum, seeing the Air Force Cross.
Yeah. But, and I am not trying to be enlisted versus officer, but that's a much different spot. That's a much different. You know who that is, guys? That's Chief Airy. That's the first Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force.
Yeah.
And
So all of our
much,
listeners, Mr. Etchberger is showing us some pictures of the first one was his mother and the Chief of Staff when his dad first secretly received the Air Force Cross. Now he's showing us a picture of Chief Airy. Go ahead, sir.
I was going to say I met Chief Harry in 2006, and he said, this was my very first official duty. I mean, this is early Air Force history, guys. But you can see what I'm getting at is you can see the faces there are different than the faces you saw with the chief of staff.
Who's the airman in the background in that picture, sir?
That's my brother Steve.
Oh, okay.
So Steve is 11 years older than me, and you can kind of see a little bit of Dad's mom and dad in the back over Chief Harry's shoulder back there. But this was a secret Pentagon ceremony. And again, I'm not being critical. I'm just telling you the truth. The Air Force kept this stuff secret. We were there. We were sent to the Pentagon, down in a room, and there was no, I mean, we had, this is an official Air Force photograph, but I mean, there's nothing on the back of it that says that, but it is. And they were trying to keep this shit secret. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to say it that way.
Right.
But that's the way it was. That's the way it was. They were trying to keep a secret. And the idea was, and that's why this face is on there, my mom, is because the idea was, let's award this airman the Air Force Cross. And when things are done and, sort of no longer secret, we'll award him the Medal of Honor.
Yes, sir.
This was supposed to be a Medal of Honor ceremony, but the Air Force couldn't stomach that.
Yeah, it was rejected by the Air Force Vice Chief of Staff General John D. Ryan.
You got it.
Yeah, he was recommended, but it was recommended for Medal of Honor, but it was rejected ultimately because it was considered top secret.
Yep.
At that
John
time.
Ryan, you're exactly right, Trip. John Ryan was in charge of the spook part of the, the secret part of the Air Force, and he's the one who said, "Let's get these guys out of the Air Force and hired by Lockheed Aircraft Services." And so, who shows up at the house is to tell Mom that he's dead? It's not the Air Force, it's Lockheed. It's not, I mean, they are trying to keep this so secret that the guy who shows up, and I have a copy of it here somewhere.
So you're saying that the official party didn't show up to notify?
No, sir.
It was
No,
the
sir.
company Lockheed.
It was Lockheed, not the Air Force, that shows up.
So, sir, can you tell us about what was your feeling in that moment? Can you take us back to that day that you were notified? I mean, we see, the emotion or lack thereof in the picture of the ceremony and stuff. What was going on with you? Where were you at? What was happening?
Well, that is a fantastic question. And if I wasn't 9 years old, I could tell you. I'm serious. I see you smiling. I'm 9 years old. My dad is dead. All this kind of stuff that I'm telling you now, I've only learned since 2010.
Right. So you probably didn't even really know the nature of the mission that he was on, or
no. I'm nine. I don't really know what's going on. People always ask me this of, how come you didn't ask more questions of your mother? Well, because we did not talk about it. We just didn't do it. So there you go. You guys know the significance of this, right? Air Force Cross. Have you seen one in person?
Not in person, sir. No,
Yeah.
sir.
So what does mom do with it? You know what she does with it? She puts that, I mean, if you got one of those, you'd have a freaking display out front, right? You'd have a light on it. I mean, you would have earned it, and you would, you know what mom does with it?
A shrine.
She put it in the back of a closet,
Shrine.
didn't she?
That's the word I'm looking for, shrine. I love it. You know what mom does with it?
Back of a closet?
Yep. You're right, Trip. She puts it in the back of her closet under a blanket. Now, why does she do that? It's not because it's too hard for her to watch, out there, blah, blah, blah. If it's out there, what are people going to do? Now think about this. Lying is a tough word, but what is she doing what is she telling her sons? Helicopter accident. If it's out there, what are people going to do?
Oh, they're going to ask every time they walk in your living room.
You got it, Trent.
Right.
Yeah.
They're going to ask questions. And what's she going to have to do? She's going to have to do the same thing she's doing to her sons. She's going to have to tell them he was killed in a helicopter accident. And eventually somebody's going to walk in there and go, you don't get an Air Force Cross for dying in a helicopter accident. Right? She's going to have to do the same thing she's doing with us. So why do you put it back there in the back of a closet under a box? You do it because you don't want to have to answer the question.
I've got a question for you. Right after, all of that happened, and just to kind of, well, actually, before I do that, just to kind of tell people a little bit about your father. So he was born March 5th, 1933 in Hamburg, Pennsylvania. He graduated from Hamburg High School in 1951, and he joined the Air Force on August 31st of that same year. And I thought this was interesting. He completed basic military training. We're all so used to doing this in Lackland, but he actually went to Sampson Air Force Base in New York to attend basic training. And he attended tech school, same place I went, to Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi, where he trained in electronics, which led to his career in radar bombing. And then just as we kind of, painted the picture, led us up to the events that happened at Lima Site 85. After all this happens, and you've already, explained the situation afterwards with the kind of secret ceremony that took place, did you ever consider growing up following in his footsteps? And I will tell the listeners, if you listen to the Netflix series, you hear about the story about your brother, why he wasn't sent overseas. But did you ever consider joining the military?
Let me do the Netflix thing first. We were in touch with the writers of the Netflix series, and the producers wanted to get rid of that part out of the series. And yeah, I know. And that scene where they're sitting on the mom and dad are sitting on the edge of the mountain. The writer's wife said, you can't get rid of that. And they actually ended up keeping it. So so the answer to this question is just sort of go back to 1968. I know you guys are all too young for this. But we're living a civilian life, and I've got zero sort of role model, if you will. So the answer is, I'm being really pretentious here now, Trip. If Dad lives, I'm sitting here talking to you as a retired chief. Again, I'm being really pretentious. But the problem is, Dad doesn't live. And so I've got no role model. I've got nothing. I'm living a civilian life. I don't know what the military is. I don't know what enlisted even freaking means. And so I've got nothing I've got nothing to guide me. Nobody around me even knows where Lackland is. Nobody around me is at all, part of that universe. Yeah, I don't know. Nobody in my universe has ever been to college. Nobody in my universe has ever been to wherever. And so that's the choice I decided to make is to go to college, and was the first Etchberger ever to get a college degree. And I'm proud of that, but I'm also, looking back on it, I wish I may have done differently.
Where did you go to college?
A small little college in Indiana, Earlham College. So I just took a little bit different route, and I didn't. The problem is I didn't even know what going in the Air Force was even like. Again, I had no route. Nobody told, nobody had any kind of a place for me to go. So, he was gone, and we were living civilian status, and that was it.
So now you're Cory Etchberger, and you're in college. You're living this civilian life. You decide to go into education. You become a professor. You were a college professor for 25 years.
Yep.
Can you tell us about that? About what that time you spent from growing up, being a civilian now, and then before learning about what had actually happened. How was your time as a professor, as an educator?
Well, it was awesome. I mean, I lived in 3 different places, and I will brag. Every place I went to, I earned Professor of the Year, and I had a great time. It was, and Rich did too. Brother Rich did the same thing. He is Vice Provost at Utah State University. Steve spent 25 years delivering your packages at UPS. And so we all 3 did, I guess, a little something different. But I just want to say once again that, if Dad had lived, my life would have been different. I know it would have. But, it is what it is.
I'm a firm believer of, because I lost my father when I was 11 years old.
Oh.
And I do the exact same thing. I'm like, my life would have been so much different had my father lived longer. But I'm a firm believer that through adversity, we find our purpose. And you've done some remarkable things in terms of education and some of the foundations that you've helped with. But before we get into those, take us back to when you received the phone call from the White House.
Well, I had been working with a woman who is a civilian with the Air Force, and she kind of had been sort of walking me through this whole process. And she said to me, the Air Force is going to call you tomorrow to talk about your dad's, what they call the package, which is the whole stuff that everything went through. Now, you have to know that the whole process started in 2006, and I didn't really know very much about the Medal of Honor at that point. In fact, I knew virtually nothing about it. But July 5th, 2010, she said, the Air Force is going to call you tomorrow about the package. Will you be home about noon? So I said, yeah, sure. And 12:30, July 5th, I got a phone call that said, this is Katie Johnson from President Obama's office. Will you please hold for a call? So what do you say? Yeah. And he got on the line and he recited everything that he knew about Dad's actions. I mean, it was amazing. I was stunned. He knew, he told me basically everything we talked about right here. And I said, thank you very much. And he invited us to the White House. He said, we'd like to award your dad the Medal of Honor.
What a powerful moment. If there's one word you could use to describe that moment, to encapsulate your emotion, what word would that be?
I guess it's got to be honor. It's got to be honor.
I'm feeling it now. There's so much. I mean, I feel the honor, and I can just imagine how you feel or felt in that moment with President Obama on the other line, and you going through that story and finding out all of that, and then next thing you know, you're on stage with the president in this ceremony. What was that like?
How to answer this? It was honestly, one thing we haven't talked about is that there were 12 other guys killed up there. So it's, how can I say this? It's not just about Dad. And I'm not sure fortunate is the right word, guys. but we were the only family to have a body to bury. So 12 guys killed that night. But we were the only family to have a body to bury. The other guys that were killed that night were left up there. And our team went back to try and find them, and they found partial remains of 2 of the guys. But there's still 9 families. Who don't have that. So again, fortunate, I'm not sure is the right word, but it's tough. I know those 9 families.
Hey, Cory, one
Yeah.
thing that was mentioned in the Netflix series, and President Obama, he's always good at comedic relief, right? So he mentioned to you, you were the one who was holding the Medal of Honor, right? That's what it seemed like.
It was Rich.
Rich, okay. And he whispered, was it to Rich or to you? Hey, make sure you don't drop this on stage.
You know what? I am a member of the Medal of Honor Society, Foundation. And there are 3 types of Medals of Honor three types of Medal of Honor ceremonies. So the one you saw is, how do I say it? We went back to the hotel room and popped open a bottle of champagne. Okay, I mean that's the kind of ceremony that was. The other one is where you've got a unfortunate a mom and dad whose son has been killed in Iraq, Afghanistan, like a Michael Murphy, and I guarantee you that they don't go back to the hotel room and pop a bottle of champagne. And then there is the other one where it's I guess kind of like ours, where it's a somebody from World War II or the Civil War where they found out they should have been awarding it, they didn't, and Obama awarded 52 Medals of Honor, and ours was the second. So it is a, how can I say it? We liked that it was awarded and thought it should have been, 42 years later, and it's a we like that it happened, but I just want to once again recognize the 12 others that were killed up there, and that it's always a bittersweet, because you always know there should have been others that had been saved, but they weren't. So
Corey, I see you wearing the shirt right there, the Chief Master Sergeant Etchberger Foundation
Yep.
shirt. So if you could tell our listeners about the Etchberger Foundation and any other sort of organization that you are part of.
Well, it's kind of fun. Tracy mentioned it in the video. You know, just to remind you that she was born on the same day that Dad died. I appreciate that question. So we thought Medal of Honor has been awarded. Here we go. We're done. No. So we thought at the ceremony that we would be done with this and we could just move on. And we realized that things were not done. You know, so we formed the Etchberger Foundation. And what we did when we did that was we said, who was this guy? Who was he? And scholarships for college, no, that's not who he was. Leadership and teaching others, that's who he was. So we first started with, excuse me, challenge coins and then finally the books. And you see who the number on this coin? That one's headed the White House.
Number 46.
You got it, buddy.
To all our listeners, he's showing a coin, number 46, to us right now.
Yep. That one's headed to the White House. So that's what we did, was we said, who was this guy? This guy was leadership and service to others. So that's what we do. We provide service and leadership to others. And we just wanted to make sure that, you know, what he did got to others. So.
Yes, sir. So you mentioned how do we really talk about or display, remember your father, who he was? You said he was about leadership to others, which is apparent in the award at Senior NCO Academy. Yep. How did you officially establish that award at the academy?
Well, I contacted, I think I talked to you earlier about Joe Panza, which you need to go meet this guy. He is the president of the Senior NCO Academy, the Air Force University. And I talked to them, and then I also contacted the person who's in charge of the Air Force Academy at the museum. So, yep, that's my two contacts down there.
I think it's fitting too with that award because it's not an individual award. It's from what I understand, it's the only team award in professional military education. And I actually reached out to one of the instructors, and I, was telling them, I was like, tell me every little thing that award consists of. And it is academics combined from the entire flight. It is PT. It is team spirit, like energy, which flight has the most energy whenever they get together. And it's all about just team performance overall.
Yep, don't talk to Joe Panza. He's the one. He is the one who got that together.
So you mentioned also the not just that award, but you've mentioned the book At All Cost. We've mentioned the Netflix series. And then, us in the military, we have the PDG that we read, and it has your father's heroic actions. But to a listener out there, and this is really good for our military folks, tell us a little bit about your dad outside of uniform. What were some of his hobbies? What were some movies he liked? What were some things that you've been told about your father?
Well, I would love to give you all kinds of details, but I was 9 years old. But the one thing I can remember, Trip, is and this is going to sound, kind of, I don't know, whatever, but he loved his sons. He went to work, I'm sure like you do, and, worked his ass off. But when he came home, it was all about us. It was really all about us. I remember we lived in the Philippines, and there was a vacant lot across from our house, and a local farmer, whatever, would take his caribou over there and go over there. And when Dad came home, this guy would remove his caribou, and we would go over there and play football. I mean, the thing that I remember the most, and 8-year-old or 8th grade kids love this story. He would kick a football with flip-flops on. Now, this is in the Philippines, so it's never cold there. you know what I mean? So it's like, let's go throw football, and the guy would have flip-flops on and kick a football. So it's just, I know it sounds, kind of weird, but that's what he did. He would come home, and when he was off duty, he was off duty. He was with us, 2 kids, 9 years old, 10 years old, and he would hang with us. The other thing that I remember that, may be relevant to what he said he meant. It was, if I say, he wasn't, strict is not the right word, but, he bought us, this is back in the day, he bought us brand new G.I. Joe dolls, the G.I. Joe, whatever. And I made a parachute out of a hanky. But the problem was it kept getting, I'd throw it up in the air, and a hanky is not gonna, take care of a G.I. Joe doll. And he said, don't do that. And I did it. And, he took care of it. It was and I think that's one of the ways that I think that his men really appreciated him. If I say something, I'm not going to be a prick about it, but if I say something and you do it and, don't do it again. And I did it again because I'm a kid. I'm 9 years old. And, so, I got taken to the whatever. He didn't hit me. I'm just saying that it was kind of like, okay, don't do that. I did it. So that's one thing I really, really appreciated, now that I think about it, when I look back at it, that's one thing I really appreciate about him, is that he was a person who did what he said he was going to do. And if things didn't go your way, then, he took care of it. So.
I know Pearson's got a question for you. So
Yeah,
I'm totally going to cut him off and ask one question real quick.
Go ahead.
And then I promise you got it. I'm hitting mute. But I mentioned earlier, my father was 11. You were 9. I don't remember a ton about my father. I do remember him coming home, spending time with us, interacting with us. But there was a lot of stuff that hit me 20 plus years later that I'm like, oh my gosh, I learned that from my dad. And I didn't even, what is something that you do today where you are like, wow, I get that from my dad?
I think what I just said, it's, my daughter's 22 now, so it's kind of tough to say that, but I think that's it. It's if you're going to say something, do it. I think that's it. If you are going to say something, you've got to stick to it. And I think as a leader, that's got to be something that you do. Now, again, you don't have to do something that, if you're going to say it, do it. I think that's really important.
So Trip kind of stole my question a little bit, so that's okay. But I did have a bit of a caveat onto it. So, we've learned some about how you didn't know much. You were 9, you were young. There's so much of your father's love there while he was alive, while you had him. And then now afterwards, you can still see so much love and an embodiment of him within you. But I want to know who is Cory Etchberger today, after the Medal of Honor, after the presidential appearance, and the establishment of the Etchberger Foundation. Who is Cory Etchberger today?
Wow, you're tough, man. So the answer is, I think the answer is understanding. I used to do this, as Trip knows, I used to do this in person, right? Understanding leadership. And once again, I'm not military, and I don't, but I really do understand what a leader is about. I really do understand people who think like one. I really do understand what a I guess I'm going to say what somebody who understands what a leader is about. Yeah, that I guess that's all I can say. It's.
I have one last question for you before we take this episode home. This has been remarkable. Somebody sees the name Etchberger, whether they're walking around Gunter, whether they're flipping through a PDG, whether they watch a series. When they see that name, give me one word to define it.
Leadership.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that I encourage everybody out there, if you have not, especially if you're rocking a uniform, you need to go on to Netflix. You don't just need to watch the episode on his father. You need to watch all of them, because it is some really, really good stuff. And I want to thank Cory for taking time out of his busy schedule to be here with us and to share, the amazing story, an amazing leadership story of his father. And right now, Batista, what final comments you got?
Yeah, Cory, Mr. Etchberger, I know we got really comfortable when I was calling you Cory a lot. Thank you for sharing your story about Chief Etchberger. I really appreciate that, but also sharing your story and not only celebrating Chief, but celebrating you as well before the holidays. You mentioned, you didn't serve, but I'm following Chief Etchberger's shoes, filling those shoes. That would be some hard shoes to fill. And I think you did that as a civilian, right? So one thing that we forget is, or don't talk about much, are the people who served, right? And we have a lot of people who come on our show and they help the military after they're done doing their time through some really hard times. And it's really good to have people like you or people like that out there. And it's good that you stepped up and your family and continue to share Chief's story all around everything he's done. Obviously, it was impactful. I mean, they made a Netflix series about it, or an episode about it in the Netflix series. So, what he's done is amazing. What your family has done is amazing. What you guys carry on and the service you guys do for the military outside of the military is huge. I mean, they have an award at Senior NCO OA that people go for, right? And they know the meaning about it. And it's the only team award out there. So it's an honor to sit down and talk with you. I hope we stay connected. I know before the show, we were talking a little bit, and man, it's just great to see what the Etchberger family has done and continue the legacy of Chief. So thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Pearson, what final words you got?
First off, Mr. Etchberger, I just want to say that it has truly been an honor to be a part of this session with you, this discussion. I don't even want to say interview. I want to say discussion. That's what this was. And I would like to also say that for all of our listeners, and especially those who are in uniform and those who serve outside of the uniform as a civilian, as a family member, if ever there was a time where you question why you put that uniform every day, why you wear that U.S. Air Force, U.S. Army, U.S. Navy across your chest, and you go in to do your job. If there was ever a time that you question, listen to this podcast. Listen to Mr. Etchberger and his story about his father and about how his family served and everything they went through. And if you can't find meaning after that, well, then maybe we need to do some reevaluating. But Mr. Etchberger, it's been an honor. It really has. I'm full of emotion here, so I'm not gonna make it long. But I can't wait to see you come through, Gunter. If you come through here again, I'm gonna flag you down in the hall, have some talks with you, and all that kind of good stuff. But thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
And yeah, this was an honor for me as well. And hopefully our listeners took a ton out of this, getting more information than just what they've seen or heard before. And, I always hear people tell me all the time, oh, your dad would be proud and stuff. But, I think looking at what you and your family have done with his legacy is amazing, and spreading his message around the Air Force to where now it is a leadership team award at Senior Non-Commissioned Officer Academy, I think is remarkable. And I think y'all are doing some amazing stuff with the Etchberger Foundation. And we cannot thank you enough for taking time to be here with us today. Sir, any last comments for our listeners?
I would just like to get the address for the three of you so you can get one of those.
Of course, I'll pass it on to Trip.
Yep, so, absolutely. No, we appreciate that, sir.
And I'll make sure each of you get a 50th anniversary challenge coin.
Wow, we greatly appreciate that. We do.
Such an honor, sir.
Yep.
Can you hold it up so we could take a picture with all three of us here? Because I don't think we'll ever have, yeah. And we can see your head in there, right?
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, sir, thank you so much for taking time to be with us, folks. That is going to conclude this episode of Shadows Podcast. Stay tuned for further episodes. That concludes this one.